Our second talk, we have Tutum, Borja and Fernando here from Tutum. They're in the midst of Techstars, so we really appreciate them coming out here, giving us some of their time to show us what they're up to with Docker. So I'll leave it up to you guys.
Does it work? Hello? It works, yeah? So I'm just going to have to talk very loud. There's no mic. Should I use both?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's interesting. First of all, thank you, Nuxeo and Docker and everybody, Jesse, that put the event together. Thank you so much for letting us be here and present. I've got 15 minutes. I was going to present one topic, figured that wasn't challenging enough, so I'm going to be presenting 3 things instead. I'm going to try to go very, very fast. My name is Borja. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Tutum. This is Fernando, CTO and co-founder. We are in the middle of Techstars right now. And very briefly, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Tutum and what it is. Containers as a service. You might have heard of infrastructure as a service and platform as a service. Containers as a service. What is containers as a service? The easiest analogy is to say containers are to Tutum what virtual machines are to Amazon Web Services EC2. Virtual machines are to DigitalOcean droplets, and so on. Our basic building block is a container as opposed to a virtual machine. So you don't have to worry about the kernel, the operating system, system configuration, patches, and such. Quick raise of hands. Who is using Docker today? Who has actually used Docker? Okay. Now, out of the people that are using Docker, who knows what trusted builds are? Okay, well, we've got something coming up for that later. So why Tutum? Well, containers are great. Getting a $5 instance on Droplet and installing Docker and playing around with that is great. But what happens when you want to do a real deployment? Multi-host, linking, how do I load balance? How do I do service discovery? I mean, the presentation earlier was showing how to do all that. It's not trivial. We abstract all that away. You manage your containers, your applications are containerized, you forget about everything else. How does it work? Magic, no. So this is a diagram. I'm going to do a demo that I think is more explanatory than this. But Tutum users have access to an HTTP API, a web interface. Then there's our middle layer, our orchestration, control, and monitoring layer. We do have a truly infinite CPU and compute resource. Not really, we run on Amazon. And then the world access the application that you deploy through a load balancer that we provision. We've got a Docker registry and boot jar, which I'll be showing up later. So let's do a quick demo of Tutum. And maybe I don't know how I can do this one hand. You can see you can tell them what's going on. Yeah. That's my email. All right. This is
Okay, so I can tell you what's going on. So this is the main interface of Tutum. So I think the first demo is to deploy
Hello World.
A Hello World container. So in Tutum we can deploy any application in the Docker index or any application in any registry, really. So we are searching, well, here search on the Docker index, or we have 15 minutes. So here search our Hello World image in the index, and now here you can specify the configuration for that container. So basically the image type that you want to deploy, the size of the container, different sizes have different memory and CPU and so on. The number of containers you want to deploy a cluster from that image, and any commands that you want to override in the run command. And we also have some services like crash recovery, so we can auto-start the container if it crashes. We can auto-destroy it if it's a one-off command and you want to basically terminate it after it's done. And we can define the ports and so on. So we click deploy. This is in beta version, so this should work. And this is the this is the main interface for the application. So we have deployed a Hello World application, and at the moment, it has only one container.
And that took like, I don't know, 7 seconds to deploy. This is a full-fledged PHP application that we just deployed.
So this application, because it's listening in port 80, we know it's a web application. So for web applications, we put a load balancer on top of it.
Tell them about the logs.
A transparent load balancer, which is based on high patching. So we can see that we have allocated a URL for that application. That URL load balances in round robin for all the containers that are part of that application. And we can see the basic stuff. We can see the logs, we can see the links, the environment variables, and monitoring. So for monitoring, we have implemented our own version of monitoring. So we read C groups, we read Docker, API, and we send all these to a time series database. At the moment, we are using TempleDB, which is a time series database as a service. So we send all the metrics there, and then in our interface, we just read them and display them in nice graphs. And then for deployment, basically you drag your slider and you can deploy more instances. So as those instances are being deployed, they are being registered in the load balancer automatically for you, because it's a web application. That doesn't work for MySQL or anything else, right? But we are working on it. So
Is that
he's
right?
trying to show the round robin of the load balancer.
That Safari sucks. Let's go do. There you go.
Yeah, so basically it's a basic load balancing for that application. So these containers are actually deployed in different hosts. So we run on top of EC2 in Amazon. Those containers are deployed in different availability zones. So if one availability zone goes down, we ensure that the application doesn't go down. That happens transferring into the user without having to worry. You deploy 2 containers that will be HA as one example.
So I just want to add that we just deployed 4 containers running 4 PHP applications. It's a fully highly available load balance application, not at the host level, but also at the availability zone level in Amazon in about, I don't know, I wasn't taking time, but hopefully less than a minute. I want to show you another example though, one that's more complex. This one is rather simple. Let's do really quick. Let's launch a MySQL. I'm going to call this DB for environment variable purposes. Why is it not showing my, oh sorry, yeah. So I don't know what that, there you go. I need to set the password to that MySQL. I set it as DB. I could not fill this in and it will just create a random password, but I like my password better, much simpler. All right. So we're gonna launch a MySQL database, and I'm gonna launch a WordPress container, link to the database, and then see if that works. So the DB is working, it's launched. You can check the log, see what's going on, right there. Perfect. Now, the WordPress image, I'm gonna pull it from the public index. And then we have a WordPress. Let's launch that in Medium. I'm gonna link it to my database. And I'm also gonna set this password to the password of the database so that it can connect to it. All right, so it's running. Let's check the logs to make sure. Perfect, and there it is. Runs a full WordPress site with its own different MySQL in just a few seconds. So that's enough with Tutum. We do have a CLI tool if I'm logged in, and I don't know if I am. Nope. So we've been changing our CLI, and I don't remember the last command. So you can check what's running through our CLI tool. Great. I've got some containers, a WordPress, a Hello World, and a DB. And we've got a developers API, Python libraries, and all that stuff. Let's go back to the presentation then. So that's all great, and one of the announcements I want to do is that, well, we're hearing from our users that they want to use the Docker CLI, right? We've got our own CLI, but why can I not just do Docker run and deploy things in this Tutum cloud, which is an unlimited Docker host? So we did it, and I'd like to demo it to you. You can probably not see this, right? I'm just writing blindly here. All right, so can you hold this? Right now I've got Docker set up on a boot to Docker. It's just a VM, a Linux VM running on my machine. I've got nothing running. What I'm gonna do is change the Docker host to another host that I have. So now the Docker client is actually pointing to Tutum. So I'm able to do a Docker PS, and boom, I've got all my containers that were running in Tutum accessible through the Docker CLI. Now, because Tutum has functionality like crash recovery, load balancing, scalability, that Docker CLI itself doesn't support, there's not many things that you can do with this. I can surely launch and do another container, and that will run and get deployed, and you launch a new application. But there's not, how do I scale my application with the Docker CLI? It doesn't have support for that. We're working with Docker to improve the CLI and have support for the sort of things that cloud providers like us are building. There should be an announcement of this coming up in the DockerCon in June 9th and 10th, I believe, in San Francisco. So stay tuned for that. So that's the Docker connector. I don't know if I'm doing on time, but I feel like I'm rushing. The next announcement, Boatyard. So for those of you that are familiar with trusted builds, wouldn't it be great if you could have your own trusted builds behind the firewall? Wouldn't it be great if you could build Docker images but not have to push them to the public Docker registry? You could push them to a third-party registry like Quay.io or the registry running in Tutum, or your own personal registry. That's what Boatyard does. It's a tool and a free service that we're providing, and an open source project that allows you to do builds for Docker in a programmatical way with an API and very simple. So Fernando is going to demo this, because we actually launched this yesterday, and I don't know why I'm going through the slides. I haven't tried it myself. So.
Yeah, so basically we launched this 2 days ago. It's a little open source project that basically wraps Docker build as a web interface and an API. So basically with this, you can run it on your laptop or in your servers behind the firewall. Basically gets destination image and username and password. And this image can be on any registry. It can be the public registry of Docker, but it can also be any private registry that you are using, personal registry, Quay.io or whatever, or our registry. So you can put your target image name, you can put your username and password to authenticate with that registry to do the push. And then it gets, at the moment, it gets 3 inputs. It can be either a Docker file that you can enter manually in the web interface, a GitHub repository, so you can specify the username, repository name, and branch or tag. Or you can also specify a tarball URL where the contents of your app and the Docker file are. So it will fetch that tarball and pass it to Docker for building. And what it does, you can specify here anything, Tutum Cloud, which is our username, Docker -hello, and that can be master, so to build the master branch, and just say build. Basically, it does Docker build and pushes it to that registry. It can be any registry. So this is a little tool that we use internally, and we decided to open source it. So there is a free service of Boatyard.io that you can use, and you can also see all the source code of this in GitHub. So there are lots of things that we want to implement that we don't have time to. So it would be awesome if you could contribute to it. So that's Boatyard.io.
So if I understand correctly, there should be an image called Docker Demo Meetup in my Tutum private registry, right? So my users. So if I go to launch new application, and I go to private images, cool. It's awesome. works. Good job. You didn't lie to me. Let's launch it and see if it really works.
Go that far.
All right. Ooh. Cool. And cool. Awesome. Good job. I think that's our time's probably up. So thank you.